Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. Well, I found a box of prints that I had framed a while ago. I had just gotten a bunch of frames. I don't even know where I got them now. Maybe TJ Maxx on sale, clearance, Big Lots, Tuesday Morning maybe. I don't know. I don't think Tuesday Morning's in business anymore. Years ago. Or just ones that were around that I took other things out of. But I had this print given me of Mary. Isn't it beautiful? It just is a little different than most. Or I mean just different than the usual. I don't know, I guess you'd have to be Catholic to know the usual. There seems to be some that are just very well known and very typical. But I don't know the artist of this. I could probably find out by doing a search online. And then behind it, I also got out one. This is one from the old book that I had on the Catholic religions. 1897 or 1896 was the publication, and it was falling apart. I got it at an auction back in the Midwest, and missed getting an incenser. Oh, I have one now that I got when I went on my pilgrimage, and I haven't. I should do that. That would help just the ambiance in here, the essence, the energy, the scent, the ambiance of the positivity of the church, and reminiscent of Mass and of different solemnities where they would incense the altar, or even my own hermit vows in my hermit ceremony that my spiritual father and I had. It was a long one. I based it on an old anchoritic ceremony from the 11th or 12th century from England, an anchoritic rule and ceremony and the whole thing. And he did cut out some of the scriptures. It was like, it probably would have been an hour and a half. He cut it down to maybe it was 45 or 50 minutes. And he had a sermon prepared. It was lovely. And it's just beautiful. And but he incensed the altar. He incensed my sign, my crucifix, my sign of my vocation that I chose, and incensed me and my vows. And so but yeah, I have incense here and an incenser that would help change the ions. Is that what it's called? I don't know. That just came to me though. And I could incense my pictures, but this one back here is of Saint Anthony of Padua holding Jesus. And when you see, I thought was that Joseph, Saint Joseph, but no, the one with Saint Anthony, typically he's holding lilies. So even though I didn't find this exact one, I think that's who it is. And my mat cut off on the print itself, but I know the print was from the book. This book that had lots of old prints of saints and biblical figures, and I have the Stations of the Cross. I put those in plastic sleeves in a notebook. So I had Stations of the Crosses wherever I would live, but I haven't done that here. I want to do that this spring, and I'll choose conifers to be the stations, different conifers, I think. I will do that. I guess I could do deciduous trees, but the conifers are very distinct, so I'll try to have them be according to the particular station. Like Jesus being stripped of his garments. Maybe one out front that's the limbs are very loose and, open. Like arms and legs with nothing much on. I have one in mind, in fact. So, but I'm going to put out these different pictures, prints in frames, and I found another one that my friend had sent along, actually with the one from Song of Songs that I had, only one that he let me purchase, but he sent along a beautiful small of the crucifixion. And so I remembered, so my memory isn't gone, it's just different, very odd. I have these major blackouts of memory, and I'm very in the present moment. That's what I have discerned and figured out, analyzed, that I am so in the present moment, and I don't remember after that. Like yesterday, I don't remember. I had to look at a calendar today to see that it was Friday. Part of that is being a hermit and just not being out in the world much. There's no need. I mean, and as I was trying to think of what day, I even told myself, well, it doesn't really matter what day it is. It matters a little bit because on Friday I try to refrain from meat or something. I try to make some added sacrifice, intentional, thinking of Christ's sacrifice, which was on a Friday. But and then Saturdays I consider for the Virgin Mary, and so I like to wear blue, or maybe I'll light a blue candle or something. So there's something that will be a remembrance. But yeah, this memory thing is most strange, and it's I had to go back to the T-Mobile store and talk with Ethan, and I was going to call him, but I did ask him. I walked in, I said, Ethan, he's the manager there. Ethan, had I already told you of my experience with the septic shock and all of the amazing, it was just so amazing, all the things that went wrong that should have killed me, but then all the things that went right. That's a good example of we can allow the negatives to sour us. And I admit at times I have used terms like dimwits or knuckleheads for the ER doctors. But then when I got that report from the EMS company, and the EMS guys had somehow written down my daily medication, and they had it 6 times the amount of what it is and has been for now 3 years in February. I couldn't believe, though, that the ER doctors didn't take a blood test right off the bat. They didn't. They were just sure I was a drug overdose. Especially once they, heard how much medicine. That's why that one guy said, "You're loaded with narcotics." No, I wasn't at all. I'd even thrown up my little morning pill. But so, but then it made it like, well, it wasn't really their fault then, So it's, this positivity is going to be a challenge and a gift, both. But it will take some effort on my part, some challenge, some discipline, some effort to consider the positive in situations, and to hold to it, to love. Hold to love, Mercy, hold to love. That's what we'll do. You with your little red bows on, and Lovey has his little red bow. Right? I found this poem here. Oh, I was going to go back to my little story with Ethan, and sure enough, I had repeated. Evidently in October, I had switched something of our service. Was it the internet server? Switched it over to T-Mobile. And I already had our phone on it, and I don't have TV. It seemed like there was some other service on it. And I had just repeated. And when I got home Monday night, I had this little flash that I had repeated to this young man. Then I had to strain the brain to think back. When was it that I'd been in there to do some business? And it was in October. So I walked in yesterday and said, Monday night had I repeated that story? Because I remember I was standing on concrete. And let me see if this is working here. Yeah, it still is. And of course, my pain was going up because I was standing there in the store. Plus, I was concerned about the germs with the gal who was coughing. And because I don't want to get sick. I have low immune system. So, but yeah, sure enough, I had repeated. And I said, well, why didn't you stop me? He said, well, I thought about it. He said, I just didn't want to be rude to you. I said, be rude next time, be rude if I repeat. But that's when we got into discussion, and I couldn't remember, I can't remember my password at all for something else, and there's something else I couldn't remember when it was that I'd been there to get the new phone. Then finally he helped me figure that out. That was Monday. And I said, my mind, and I said, you mentioned dementia to me, but I said, I had said the word other levels and dimensions regarding something we were talking about. And he said, oh yeah, he says, because I wouldn't have accused you of having dementia. That would have been rude for a store manager to do to some old lady. But he had mistaken the word dimensions and thought I had said dementia. And I said, no, I don't have dementia, but I do have this strange memory problem where I'll have blocks of time I won't remember. And like I said, I could not remember. I kept thinking it was last spring that I'd gone in there to change our services with T-Mobile. My daughter's on it with a family plan. But no, it was just October. But I didn't know. And other things of memory block or just blank out. So it's the strangest thing. I've never felt like this before, and it's been going on for a while. But where the conscious mind will leave. I guess that's the way to put it. It just goes off, away from the pain. And so I'm not sure. I mean, I had the GP, maybe it's been a year or more ago, test me. And he says, oh, you don't have dementia, you don't have Alzheimer's. But it must be something maybe either connected with the pain or with arachnoiditis and how it alters the brain, even the brain structure. But Mercy's sort of mesmerized here with getting her ear massaged a little bit. These little creatures are so much fun. Aren't you fun, Mercy? Oh, Lovey's fun. But it does I have just a sense of the whole world around me, but that might be the neck and the disorientation that comes, the perception and everything. But the other day, what came to me with the mind situation is that God is clearing out, doing like a document dump, a computer file dump, dumping out files of temporal information. Anything that's not present moment or not necessary spiritually for me. And he's giving me the spirit, all the empty files to fill it with the spiritual. The love of God, to learn love. Somehow that was what came to me as to what is going on. That I'm having my temporal memories, my temporal ability to remember is being dumped out, all those details, And in its place is this openness with the spiritual can fill in. But I'm definitely in the present moment, living in the order of the present moment. I've been in the order of the present moment since March 19th of 1996. In the order of the present moment, the initials are OPM, order of the present moment. And if you say that real fast, OPM, you get opium. Isn't that clever? Opium. But the order of the present moment, St. Joseph is the patron of it. This is nothing I thought up. This happened at Mass on the morning of March 19th, 1996. I was on the floor because they didn't have pews in this big birdcage chapel at the convent, which is no longer a convent, but back then it was. And my spiritual dad was up at the altar. He was preaching. And my little mind was wandering, and I was in a lot of pain. My son had gone to school. He was at school. It was a gray, cold day in March 19th, St. Joseph's Day, his feast day. And just into my mind came this question. Well, Jesus, what are you up to today? Just sort of smarty a little bit, but because I was like bored. I mean, I didn't have any, I was a wanton woman, just without purpose, without a plan for the day. It was another day. Here I was at Mass, and I wasn't listening to the sermon. I had that thought, and I asked Jesus, well, so what are you up to today, Jesus? I said it like that. So what are you up to today, Jesus? And he appears. He appeared right then and there. Had his cross over his shoulder. He was bent over. He was all bloodied, tattered, and torn. His skin torn. Crown of thorns. Blood down his face from the thorns. Blood on his arms and his legs from his cloak had been just shredded by the whips and things, and or he'd been whipped, and evidently they let him get his clothing back on what he had, but it's torn and just in a bloodied, a really horrific sight. And he just looked at me and he says, I'm suffering, and that's well enough for you. That was it. And he disappeared. And I was like, whoa, I'm sorry. I was flippant, and I'll get with it. Because I was suffering. It was like, here we go again. But I wasn't terribly. My suffering level is far higher now with the arachnoiditis progressed all these years. Well, that would have been 30 years ago, this March. And with that, though, when he left, I was told that I was in the order of the present moment. Oh, because I'd also asked this. Yes, this was another thing. I had prayed because I had wanted to be in an order, and I was told I was in the order of the present moment. In fact, I think these were two different sets of things. That was one of the suffering, and that's well enough for you. That wasn't March 19th. The March 19th one was when I was praying. This different scenario. It's coming back. God wants us to be straight, and it would be in all my journals. Okay, so that was separate. That was a different time. That might have been in the fall or something when I asked that question and Jesus set me straight. But on March 19th of 96, I think it was. I'm sure it was 96, yes. The first year I was Catholic. So I became Catholic August 22nd of 95, right before. The convent was having a special celebration of some sort. of their community, the Victory Knoll Sisters or whatever, Our Lady of Victory, missionary sisters they were. And people were coming in from other places. But my godmother said she would not let me. I could not go to the not ceremony, but just their service. It wasn't even going to be a mass. Or maybe it was it was a special mass with the bishop. I had not been to a mass with a bishop, and I was desperate to go to see if that would be different, to have a bishop instead of a priest there, And just, I didn't know, because spiritually I didn't know if I would sense something. I was curious, just idly curious, which is no reason to be asking for favors. But she wouldn't let me. Later on, my spiritual father says, oh, for pity's sakes, it was no big deal. They had people from the town came. But she was wanting to exert her control over me, I guess, or something, But she told me I could pray in the old little chapel, or I could go pray somewhere. So I chose the old little chapel. I was over there praying while they were having their mass with the bishop in the big birdcage chapel. I was in this beautiful little old chapel. And I was praying, Lord, I want a place too. I want to be in something, because I felt so excluded that, especially later when I found out that just anybody could have come. They weren't telling the people from town they couldn't come. But I don't know what the game was. It was something that she wanted to, I don't know. But it worked out well. It turned out a great positive because, yes, I was in that little chapel, and that's when God told me, you are in the order of the present moment. Because I said, I want to be in some order or be in a something with the church. And he says, you are in the order of the present moment. And I asked him, I said, well, what would I wear in this order? Because, a woman, that's I was so fascinated by, and they all had these, not all of them wore habits though, but I really admired the ones that did. And one of my elderly Protestant friends told me how she loved it when they used to wear their habits, all of them. And she says, now I don't like it. She says, you can't even tell if they're a sister or not. She's always liked that because it just seems so wonderful that they were signifying something, that they stood for something. So to outsiders see it's important, more important than what we think, that we stand for something and that we have the courage to wear something that signifies our beliefs or our group unity, like being in a religious order. But yes, and I said, so, well, what would my habit be? And he says, whatever you're wearing in the present moment. I hope I'm getting this straight. Well, I guess it doesn't matter where it was, but that was how it turned out, and why I was praying to have a place. And he gave me a place, the order of the present moment. And so I was excited about that. That really perked me up. And I got home. Oh, of course, I had to tell the spiritual Da when he wasn't in with the mass with the bishop. He was their chaplain, but they had the bishop doing this thing, so he wouldn't need to be there. So I told him about it. I'm in the order of the present moment. And he says, well, there's a book you could read about, it's by de Caussade. Pierre de Caussade, and it's called Abandonment to the Present Moment. It's a classic. It's an old book. You can get it in paperback. It's a lovely book. It talks about living in the present moment. But it's by this priest, a French priest, from maybe the 18th century, 1700s, I think. And he realized that, the good of being in the present moment and that God has us in the present moment. That's a very spiritually good place to be, to live in the present moment, to live it fully, live fully the present moment. So I'd been told that's my order, and I got home and asked, was getting towards supper time. My son had gotten home. I was all excited, told him about it. He thought it was pretty awesome. And I said, you are too. Anybody can be in the order of the present moment. That's the point, it's for all of us. And he was in, sixth grade then? And no, he was very supportive. Like I said, he got out of sorts by his end of his junior year or into his senior, definitely in his senior year. Spring of senior year was rugged, individuating out, very ready to go to college, but got very upset over the habit things. I talked about that, I think, unless that was one of the videos I didn't post, but how he got so upset about it. But I felt it best not to give in to him, not to let him dictate to me. And he was old enough. He was a year older as it was. He was 19. He was mature. He could cope. We'd been through far worse in life. But that was one thing he was very angry about and wanted me not to. But it only lasted 4 months because I realized the foolishness of it, that you're not hidden at all. And it's a farce too, because people think that you are something special or have great religious esteem or power or something. They'll just open up their hearts to you as strangers would, just because I had a habit on that looked like a religious. And as we know, not all are created equal. Teresa of Avila had to get rid of one of her sisters. She was so terrible. She made a pact with the devil, in fact. So, you don't want to just indiscriminately go and just assume that because somebody's wearing something that signifies they're a religious, even a crucifix, that they are the perfection of Christianity or have great religious acumen. You cannot assume things by outer appearance. Anyway, but I told him about this, and I said, oh my goodness, who's the patron saint? Who would be, because all these religious orders have patron saints. So, like the daughters of St. Paul, Blessed James, Alberione is their patron. And founder. So I asked, who's the patron? I remember I was just on my way walking out through the family room into the kitchen area. My son was there starting to do his homework at the table. And boom, St. Joseph is. Of course, it was St. Joseph's Day, the 19th of March. So that has had great significance, because then I started wondering, well, why would it be St. Joseph? What connection with the order of the present moment? But God had me do mental thinking with that. Use the mind and the common sense and knowledge of Scripture. So I started thinking about St. Joseph. And any connection, he did God's will like that. He didn't stop. He didn't ask questions. When he heard the voice say, or in the dream told, take her as your wife now, take her into your home. She is a child of I forget how the Holy Spirit put it in the dream, but didn't just come right out and say, but expected Joseph to accept in faith. And Joseph did. And the scripture says he went, after the dream, he took Mary into his home as his wife, knowing the child was not his, but of God, somehow of God. And he was told by the angel, do not divorce her. She is of it was of divine something, divine intervention or such, that she is with child. And so he just trusted. He did. Boom, right in the present moment. No questions, no hesitation. Immediately dropped his plans to quietly divorce her, because he didn't want her stoned to death or anything, because he thought that she'd had relations with a man other than him, of course. So then, when he found the inn and all that all transpired, and then a couple of years later, he was awakened in the night and told, take the child and the mother and go into Egypt. Take them into Egypt and stay there until I tell you more. Up he got them, loaded up the mule. Off they went to Egypt in the middle of the night. He did not question. He did not hesitate. He did not wait a few days. I did not say, oh, well, I better tell everybody. I better make better plans or find somebody to feed the cat or whatever. He just up, and that's what they did that night. And so he was a present moment person in major ways. If he hadn't been, if he had hesitated, good chance, Jesus could have been killed, because Herod was having all the children, all the male children under two and under killed. And Jesus was 2 or under at that time. They think it was maybe a couple of years or something, but between, he wasn't beyond 2, but it wasn't just immediately after he was born that this happened. There was some time that had passed. So, and trying to think of other things that there isn't a lot more. Finding him in the temple. That, they were there, they were doing what they needed to do, realized that he was missing, and immediately stayed behind to look. So, of course, I suppose anyone would, but any parent would, but he also remained very calm. So he had a self-possession in the present moment too. Like I say, he didn't do a lot of second guessing, and trusted God implicitly, and didn't question the dreams. Well, I guess I'd better go check with the rabbi and see if he thinks this dream really means it or not. He trusted God. He was close to God, and existed in the present moment and obeyed in the present moment. So it made sense to me that he would be the patron of the present moment. That took incredible faith for a man who otherwise thought his wife his betrothed had sex with another man and got pregnant. And but he never said anything to her, didn't get mad. He just quietly made plans to divorce her, because otherwise, if people knew, they would have, the tradition was to stone someone to death for adultery like that. So, he would have had a right, but he had a self-possession of his emotions, his mind, himself, self-control in the present moment. He didn't fly off the handle on any of these things, or panic, or negotiate with God like I have done in my life. Well, let me wait, let me see, better think this over, or start praying, oh, give me courage now to do it. Or give me a few years. So that was the order of the present moment. That's good to know today too. And that thought about the incenser that I didn't get at the auction, A Protestant lady got it, and I tried to ask her if I could please buy it from her. She wouldn't. She collected them, even though she wasn't Catholic and didn't really like Catholicism. But she liked incensers. She was fascinated with them. And I don't know, maybe by now she's converted, or in her life she did. There was a big draw for that aspect of the mass, and so, and of different, like the burial and the any major celebration, out comes the incensers. In fact, that the first priest, he told me, he says, well, you've come to the church of smells, bells, and what was the third thing? Anyway, smells and bells. He says incensers and ringing of bells. He says we celebrate. We like to celebrate. And I love that too. It's great. So today we're going to celebrate, Mercy. We're going to incense. We're going to celebrate. It's the order of the present moment. I needed to be reminded of that. But my mind is in the present moment. My memory is in the present moment. I have noticed that. I have figured that out. That I don't remember much outside the present moment, unless it's something way back, which is can imitate Alzheimer's and dementia, especially Alzheimer's. They can usually have long-term memory. But arachnoiditis can imitate Alzheimer's, but it's not. So I'll just have to wait, just wait and see present moment. There's nothing, I haven't been my sleep isn't normal. My diet isn't normal. And my cousin did send me this thing this morning. Somebody on Facebook Reels, some doctor talking about how if your intestines aren't right, it will affect your brain and your memory. So it could be a combination of things. But I'm very much in the present moment. And my daughter had mentioned one time, well, you've always talked about how we're to live in the present moment. She says, just be happy you are, but it's strange. It's really strange to have things seem foggy or something, or I think a lot of it is also the pain. There's temporal reasons that go along with everything. The spiritual and the temporal are connected. They're not independent of each other. I noticed on a comment somebody had made on somebody's Facebook about that the Catholic Church is just a human invention or something to that effect. I think it was human invention. No. The humans have done things. They have created aspects, traditions and protocols, canon laws, things that the intention is to augment and uplift, to make even better, or to help to assist such as in a celebration. Add some incense and some ringing of bells, singing, dancing. They don't dance, but they could. They in Nigeria they do. There's dancing and all kinds of singing that's very different than ours. It's far more joyous, not as somber, not as formal. But and their masses can go on for like 3 hours. They love it. Their faith is so strong. But the church is, because I said, well, it was created by God. Christ instituted it. So no, it's God himself instituted the church. Humans have added to, created traditions and things to add to lift up, to augment, to make the religious worship lovelier or memorable for them or appropriate to a culture. Like in Africa, it's different than it is in Eastern Europe, than it is in Russia, than it is in China or the United States. All these, the Catholic churches all over the world, in all these different cultures, or in Middle Eastern, the Orthodox Christian. So it's the Eastern wing of the church as opposed to the Western. So it's had but a lot of unity also. But the spiritual that's in the church, it's mostly spiritual, very spiritual. And that's part of the problem, is people then themselves would make a comment like that it's just temporal, it's just made up, it's an invention of humans. Well, no, that's why people don't get much out of it then. They just are so temporal thinking, so human, that they don't witness or imbibe, don't sense the mystical and the spiritual in it. And the fact that Christ himself instituted it, started the church, and the structure, the base structure, is not different. The spiritual structure is no different than it was back then. He even had, the Eucharist, the body and blood. He said, "Do this in remembrance of me." That was to be part of the worship, part of the church, the action of the church. And and he, go out and tell the world. The evangelism is part of the church. Jesus said to do that. And many of his lessons were the groundwork of traditions. And his life, much of his life even. So just his statement, "Do these things in remembrance of me." So now I want to read this poem. I might have read it already, but it's Involution. I have read Convolution, and Convolution is what took me off on all the research on these terms, dodecahedron and pentagonal and concept of time, starting or ending points, initiation, that we are in the Alpha and Omega, and then God's message at the end was relax and flow, work with, allow the rubber cone to be convoluted, allow the energy to roll with that rubber cone in and through and poured out into that vastness through which all energy flows, the cosmos, our lives. Let all this flow, let the energy flow and roll out, all naturally, all by God's energy and his doing, his movement. Relax and rest in God's flow. So that was convolution. Involution doesn't really have the same kind of feel, I don't think. Or I don't know. It was written a year later than or at least a few months later. I think maybe it was 3 or 4 months later than Convolution. But it we'll see. It just seems not, but it has wisdom in it all the same, I think. I guess let you guys decide for yourselves, and as I read it, maybe it'll hit more in this present moment. See, every present moment matters, because the present moment of that Convolution poem 39 years ago, it didn't make any sense to me. And it was a different kind of poem. I didn't write a poem like that ever before, with all the mathematical or geometric stuff in it. And these different points and sectors and whatever. This was more a little bit. This is more feeling. Involution. It is difficult to express here the sadness I feel. My mind knows and understands the reasons for the pain. My mind can even see the reflection as from the illusion cast in the mirror, and I can see myself as an expression of striving for love and completion. The loving way I am being shaped is only pain from my material perspective. I create the pain by the conflict of matter crushing matter. It is so hard to completely and fully give over when I so passionately and earnestly cry out to God to use me, to take me, that I am His. Then I go through more testing and pain and sadness because there is still in my physicalness a resistance to being formed in the way I am to become. I'm thinking of Sophia here. She has felt this and pulls back or at least holds steady, doesn't go ahead and go in, give in. She feels it will take her into madness even if she fully gives over. And I understand that feeling. Being pulled and involuted may take years, lifetimes even. To lose oneself is difficult when oneself has been close on one's heels. It's like a shadow attempting to lose a body. That's exactly what it is like. My body is a dead weight to my soul at times. So, in that present moment, I think I recall, I looked in a mirror and just looked into my eyes and thought, who are you? What is this? Why are you here? My children were little. It was a year after the divorce was finalized, or a few months after. It's early 1987. The divorce was finalized the end of October in 1986. In fact, I think October 26th. I think it was my niece's birthday was the divorce final. But it's now, in this present moment, have I lost my shadow? I don't think so, but I think it's being lost. I think God is separating me out. It says here, it being pulled and involuted may take years, lifetimes even, in order to, if we've got to stop resisting being formed in the way we are to become. Well, I'm to become pure love now. That is the overriding, single-pointed purpose of why I'm still here, is to become pure love, which involves neutralizing the negatives and activating the positives, and activating that what's neutralized of negatives into positives. So, but it is difficult. But my body doesn't feel like a dead weight like it did back then, and not a dead weight to my soul. It just is. The pain, I think, has actually made it feel lighter. It's like the pain has whittled away my body. My body doesn't have that much importance to me anymore. As far as output, and part of that's age and knowing that I'll be leaving this body before long. So that helps. The perception and the reality is a truism. That's a truth. So it's easier to think in terms of being a shadow, or of having left the shadow, um, that it's not close on my heels. It's not just right behind me. You know, maybe we become our shadow more. I have become a shadow of myself, of my earlier self, increasingly. So it's like a shadow attempting to lose a body. So the shadow becomes instead of the body. So this is making more sense reading it aloud, sort of talking it over with you. And it is true that pain, from a material perspective, from our human, is what it is conflict of matter with matter. Situations with situations. It's a conflict. That's what causes pain, is the conflict. If we have no conflict with a situation, if I have no conflict with the nerve pain, if it's just there, like right now, if I focus on my body a little bit here, it's especially going down sort of the inside of my rear end and down my legs, more the inner thighs and on the back of the thighs, but more to the inside, and all the way down under my knees, down the calves, and down into the ankles and out into the feet, where it starts to spread out then. But otherwise, it's a line coming down from the lumbar, and it splits and goes down, travels down major nerve pathway there. But I'm not at war with it. I'm not bothered by it. There's no conflict. And physically, I'm not doing anything to increase it. I'm laying here. And so it's not a problem. I'm not creating more. And I'm not really, it's just not a problem. I'm shaped by the pain. The pain has shaped me in a very caring, loving way. Over the years, it has opened up my capacity to love and my capacity to separate from my body, to become the shadow. I don't have a need to be out there in the world, to be front and center on the stage or anything. No, not literal stage, but the stage of life. I don't have any big need to have an earthly spouse. That went away when I was 45, I think. 45, 46 maybe. 46. Had a final test from Jesus, and he allowed a final test. And I had a choice that came from so deep within, I didn't even know I was making the choice. It came as a surprise in the night, through a test in the night, a miraculous test that ended up being Jesus testing me. And he was just thrilled, and I was too, with my reaction. It was like, because he came as a man. And I sat up in bed, even with my awful pain. I was awakened. I sat up. I saw this man standing by my bed with just a white towel wrapped around, or a white cloth around his waist. Bare chested. I didn't see up above. I just saw that. And I just shouted out aloud in my bedroom. I'm glad my son didn't wake up. Or when would it have been? Yeah, I don't think, no, my daughters weren't home from college then. And I just said, no more men troubles. No more men troubles. I put my arm out like, get away. And immediately that I looked up and I saw it was Jesus. I saw his head, his beard then, and up this, and then he just catapulted down and transformed into a little boy of about like 3 years old, somersaulting in the air, down, laughing and laughing with joy, and then dissipated. I couldn't wait to tell my spiritual dad, and he said, "Wow, that was your test." He says, "Jesus was testing you to see how you would react, and he wanted you to see how you would react, wanted you to hear how you'd react, and the strength of it, it was quite something." But as soon as I went like this and touched that chest, pushed, and that's what caused him to, and called out, "No more men trouble." Yelled it out. I meant it. And that soon as the touch on his skin, he catapulted, he transformed. And that laughter it was just joy, and a child's laughter of great pleasure and delight, of how happy he was, celebrating for me and with me. I was his. In a way, a profound way. And so that was wonderful. But that was another step of losing myself, losing that temporal aspect of what we project, we think we need, or we want, or we truly do want, maybe. But I didn't anymore. After my divorce, I was just sure I wanted to be remarried to someone nice and someone who would love me and love my children. And then, God kept showing me all the things that, it's just not so easy, and it's not so good, and the realities of humanity and how we are, and it can be a lot more, what does it say here? That we create the pain by conflict of matter, crushing matter. Add another person into a household, it can also be a conflict and create a lot of troubles, a lot more troubles for everyone. So it was as well that my situation was such that no man in his right mind would want to take it on, even to the ex-husband, who was scary, socio-psychopathic ex-husband, narcissistic, he was far away, at least by then, but still, I wasn't a good deal for anyone, not at all. It was good, and that was good, except for God. Jesus can handle me. He can cope. He tolerates me well. So, yes, it's difficult to lose ourselves, and that sense of, crying out, "Use me, Lord, use me, take me, I'm yours." But then you go through more testing, and then you still, though, feel this resistance, a fear of some sort even. But I am not as spiritual or evolved as Sophia. I know that. I'm not as serious about what I'm doing. I'm one of these that goes like this and leaps in, and then not doing as good a job as I should at it. Even in my spiritual life, I'm in a point right now where I'm very much free floating a lot. Resting on this bed is what I'm doing. A lot of resting. So, and distraction of different things. Well, I'm in the present moment, and it feels very irresponsible. I will say the present moment does, because I just go from one to the next, whatever presents in the present moment. Like there was that comment I noticed, and I thought, oh, I'm going to respond to that because the person doesn't understand, has no idea of the spiritual basis of the church and the mystical of the church. Probably has never been to a mass. That's huge aspect of the church. It's integral to the church. It's the Last Supper discourse right there, repeated. It's the crucifixion repeated. It's history repeated in a worship service and praise and angels singing and the sacraments, all of them there. And the recreation and the transformation, the transfiguration, it's all there. The mystic portal is there at the consecration. For those who can see it or are aware, and there are those who can and those who, everyone can, there are those who do and those who do not. It's okay. Nothing is fast. It can take years, lifetimes even, for awareness and growth. So, but hopefully most Catholics would grasp that there is a spiritual basis. The church was founded by God himself in the person of Jesus Christ on earth. And no, it's not a temporal, it's not a human created invention. The church isn't at all. But that was something I thought about then later too, is that talk about negativity. I don't know of any church, I've been in so many, that have taken the negative hits that the Catholic Church takes. And yet it keeps growing worldwide, nearly 1.4 billion. And it's, even Jesus said, it's never going to go away. It's there until the end of time. It will be the Catholic Church. And it hasn't changed. The fundamental hasn't changed. The spiritual has not changed. The Mass has not changed. Little tiny details, temporal externals, yes. They now have pews. They used to stand. Way back, they met in homes in Middle Eastern, in Israel, around Jerusalem and different places, and in Ephesus, over in Turkey, and then on into Greece. They would meet, or they would meet outside. And no, not so much, really. They have buildings now, because they have so many people. They have to. And people want nice places to sit, and they want a roof overhead for rain and cold, and air conditioning and heat in the winter, in countries where the churches have the money to do that, where people donate enough for that. So there's a lot of temporal things that have changed. Even some of the details of the prayers, or like it's English now rather than Latin, and but the spiritual, that's the basis of it. That's the bulk. But I think if you aren't sensitive to the spiritual and you view life temporally and don't have a spiritual viewpoint, then you wouldn't know that it's spiritual. And if you weren't Catholic, and I don't think who wrote that was Catholic, then they wouldn't know. It's just an outside view looking in through a window obscured by their opinions or their negative feelings or anger toward it or dislike of A lot of people dislike the Catholic Church because of its longevity, because of the power, the wealth, the stature in the world. And anyone who is sort of against that kind of thing, tradition and structure and power of any type, would have negative feelings about the Catholic Church, because it's not a democracy, it's not a political system. Although it influences, obviously, it influences a lot of life and culture, and think of the art and the music, the contributions of Catholic art, Catholic music, the artists and the musicians who were Catholic and wrote things in honor of the church or of Christ or biblical experiences. So, like the one that Vivaldi wrote for Judith in the Old Testament. So, anyway, it's interesting, but the present moment, I think whatever it is with the memory and living in being more and more in the present moment is helping me become more shadow and less, and it will help me further with this quest of becoming, transforming into pure love, so that I experience all as pure love. The opportunity to leave my comment was love. And I so appreciated it, to be able to express, and the unity of all of us. And it wasn't terrible. It wasn't, it was a loving freedom to be able to clarify, give another view, a positive view of truth, the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic Church. We tend to forget that. A lot of people just zero in on the negatives. I noticed in a news article, it's been maybe a few weeks, but they got another old geezer. He was somebody or other in another country, Dominican Republic. Maybe he was an auxiliary bishop or somebody up high and doing something. And he had been bad, sexually bad to boys. And he, of course, got some doctor to write something for him that he was health-wise unfit, unable to be put into prison in the Vatican. I didn't realize the Vatican has some prison cells. They were going to put him in. They're not taking it. They're not. But no. But he was immediately laicized, cast out of the church, any capacity whatsoever, defrocked, laicized, and of course they're pursuing legal criminal charges, but evidently he's out on his own recognizance, or well, they had a picture of him, and it was an old picture. Even he's very old. He's very old. This was in the past, but they got him. And I thought, well, it's good. That's a positive. But I have read the reality, and not that any percent is good, but the percentage of male priesthood is so far less than ministers in Protestant churches and in education. So it's keeping things in perspective, but none of it's good. None of that's good. But we go into the pure love and step down on the conflict, matter crushing matter. You get the reading this again, convoluting. So hard to completely and fully give over when we so passionately and earnestly cry out to God to use us, to take us, that we are His. Then go through more testing and pain and sadness, because there is still in my physicalness a resistance to being formed in the way I am to become. It's not the way we want, the way we are to become. I am to become. We are to become pure love. And there is the pain and the sadness when we don't. When we don't do what we are to become. But there's nothing in here that says when we are or will become. So, even a soul like the sexually perverse priest who broke the law, sex laws, moral, ethical, and legal, broke all of those, but even his soul can find repentance and come to pure love. So, and a lot of that will end up being, of course, up to God, up to the energy and force and purity of God's love. So, with that, I will see if this is still running, or did my computer shut down? Still going, so I think, okay, we'll stop talking. God bless His real presence in us. Pray about the process of living in the order of the present moment. Ask God if you're to be in that order. I think everyone is, but that doesn't mean you're going to lose your past and future. It's the present moment doesn't mean that your mind will have a document dump of memory and you'll only remember the present. But that's sort of the status I'm in now. I remember other things, obviously, but it's, for the most part, that's what's making sense to me, is that it's like my brain and memory have become dumped. The files have been dumped out of my computer brain or body or my heart even. And I remember what's going on right now and interact in the present moment. And from then on, happen chance, if I, like I did with Ethan at the T-Mobile store, I vaguely remembered that I believe I have said this before. And it wasn't a deja vu feeling. It was different. And he sure confirmed it, because I had a glimmer of it, of seeing myself there, and realized, oh, that wasn't last spring. That was in the October with Ethan. But it was a struggle to remember that that's when I had switched my internet also. My daughter had already switched her internet over in the family plan. So we had everything over, and it lowered my cost. I got out a spark light and saved lots of money, but it's a slower server, but not this slow, not as slow as my laptop was doing. So we'll find out if it's still that bad. The laptop may need to be worked on or replaced. So present moment, temporal stuff. I do like thinking about that I guess the involution of being pulled inward. It is a process before we're rolled inside out, but it's the same kind of effect. It's going to take time, and we create resistance ourselves. We're the ones that create the resistance, but God will wait. And at some point, Sophia will feel more comfortable or know she'll sense the time is right to give over totally. But I have a feeling she's given over as much as I have or more. I think more. The real total is usually when we die. That's a major giving over, when we actually leave our bodies for good. For good, isn't that a good way to put it too? So, all right, talk to you later. God bless His real presence in us in this very present moment. The Holy Trinity dwells within. Keep bringing in, feed the positive, and utilize the love that the Holy Trinity has for us to utilize in all of our encounters, in all our thoughts and words and actions.